For this lesson, our focus standard comes from Grade 7, Expressions and Equations, Standard 4B, Solve Inequalities and Graph the Solution Set. Our topic comes from Simplifying Expressions and Equations, Introduction to Inequality Statements. Our essential question is, what are inequality statements, how do we simplify them, and how do we graph them? Please take a moment pausing the video if you need to copy down the topic and essential question into your header, along with today's date, side of your question column, and your note column, and resume the video when you're ready to begin. So let's go ahead and jump right in to talking about inequalities. And a couple things that I want to review. When you're first taught about these inequality symbols, oftentimes you're taught that it's like a crocodile or a Pac-Man where it eats the bigger number. So here we have the less than symbol and the less than or equal to. Over here we have the greater than and the greater than or equal to. You can see that I've included in parentheses whether we use an open circle when graphing or whether we used a closed circle. So here I've just put down 4 inequality statements. I'm going to include a number line, and you'll want to do that for each of these 4 examples. That goes from -10 to +10. And what I'd like you to do is graph on this number line, what does it mean that x is less than 8? So any number we put in for x is going to be less than 8, and we want to be able to show that on a number line. So the way we would do that is to first put an open circle on 8, because it is less than 8, so we're marking that. And it's every number that has a lower value than 8, and so it'd be everything to the left of 8 on the number line. So that's how we graph it. If you haven't done so already, pause the video and see if you can graph these next 3, and then resume the video to see if we agree. So if I was to graph the inequality statement y is less than or equal to -5, I would include a closed circle on -5 because it's less than or equal to, so including -5, and an arrow to the left to show that it is everything less than that value. If I was to graph r is greater than -3, I'm going to include an open circle on -3, and then an arrow to show everything that is greater than -3, so everything to the right of -3. So that would show us our graph of r is greater than -3. And for our 4th and final one, g is greater than or equal to 0. Well, I put a closed circle at 0 because it's greater than or equal to, and then I would show an arrow to the right to represent every number to the right on the number line that is greater than 0. So there's a quick refresher on inequality statements and how to graph them. So let's go ahead and look at some where we actually have to do some work to solve the inequality. So our first inequality that we want to solve is x minus 1½ is greater than 4. So first we're going to ignore for now this greater than symbol and just treat it as if it were an equation. How would we solve this expression or this statement, this math sentence, if it was an equation? Well, since we're subtracting 1½ from the variable x, then our first step would be to, add 1½ to both sides. And you can see I put a line down the middle. And if we add 1½ to both sides, that's going to make this a 0 pair. So on the left, we're just going to get x. And 4 plus 1½ is 5½. So we are keeping, notice just like we keep the equal sign, here we're keeping the greater than symbol, and x is greater than 5½. Let's go ahead and graph that. Here, make sure you have a number line, and then graph what does the solution x is greater than 5½ look like on the number line. It should look something like this, with an open circle at 5.5, so my circle is right in the middle of 5 and 6, and my arrow is highlighting everything on the number line to the right of 5.5, because all these numbers over here are greater than 5.5. Let's try the next one. Here, the statement is 18 is less than or equal to 3t plus 6. Again, let's copy down this inequality statement. And what do you think are the steps to solve it? I would start by putting a line down the middle to divide the left side of the statement from the right side. And then, just like equations, do it one step at a time until you can uncover what the value of the variable is. Go ahead and pause the video here, solve the statement, and if you want to go ahead and proceed and try and graph that on the number line, go ahead and do so, and then resume the video when you're ready to check your work. Let's see how you did. Well, first, we would subtract 6 from both sides to get 3t by itself. And if we do that, on the left, 18 minus 6 is 12. So 12 is less than or equal to 3t. Since t is being multiplied by 3, we're going to divide both sides by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 3t divided by 3 is just t, so we end up with the statement that 4 is less than or equal to t. So, this one we have to be careful because our variable is on the right. So if we look at it, the opening is towards the variable. So if I wanted to read it this direction, I'd say t is greater than or equal to 4. Remember that Pac-Man, it eats the larger number. So it's open towards t, so t is greater than or equal to 4. So how would that look on our number line? Since t is greater than or equal to 4, I have a closed circle on 4, and I've highlighted all the values to the right to show that it's any of these numbers that are greater or equal to 4. For our third inequality statement, we have y plus 8 divided by 6 is less than 2. Go ahead and work your way through this problem, pausing the video to do so, and then let's check in and see if we solved it the same way. Well, since y plus 8 is all being divided by 6, I first have to multiply by 6 to get this top group by itself. So if we multiply both sides by 6, then we're going to end up with the statement y plus 8 is less than 12. Now, since 8 is being added onto the variable, I want to do the opposite. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And we find the statement that y is less than 4, because 12 minus 8 is 4. And on the graph, I'm going to put an open circle at 4, and then highlight everything to the left on the number line of 4 to show that all these numbers could be y, since all of them are less than 4. Let's go ahead and try one final problem. For our fourth and final problem, here's a problem about Ms. John and Mrs. Bond, who are discussing their vinyl record collections. Mrs. Bond has 246 records, which is greater or equal to twice as many as the sum of Ms. John's collection and 7. What is the maximum number of records in Ms. John's collection? So let's think. Here is an inequality statement that we can write for that. Let's see if we agree. Here, I put 246 for Mrs. Bond's collection, which is greater than or equal to, twice, so 2 times, the sum of Ms. John's collection plus 7. And now we need to solve it to determine how many records Ms. John must have. Go ahead and pause the video to do so, and then resume the video when you're ready to check your work with mine. 116 is greater than or equal to how many Ms. John has? The other way we can read that is start with Ms. John's. Ms. John's record collection is less than or equal to 116. And to graph it, I'd have to first estimate where 116 is on my number line. So 125 would be right in the middle of 100 and 150. So 116 is somewhere about here. You can kind of estimate that. So I've done that highlighting, and I even sometimes it's helpful to include a tick mark if you have to estimate and say write in what that number is. So our closed circle is at 116 to show that it's equal to that value or anything less. So that is going to conclude our video lesson for today.